Hey College and Career Success, welcome to week 10. We are officially in double digits, which hopefully means that you can officially see kind of the light at the end of the semester at this point. So week 10 is based on chapter 8, and this is on communicating. And so it's going to talk about communication in terms of classroom communication, listening, how communication differs from maybe outside of school to academic language. So all those various aspects of communication. And so to take a look at the lecture video, at the very least, take a look at the actual text itself or the slides, just so that you're getting a good basis of understanding of what it is talking about and all the different components of communication. So let's go ahead and take a preview of our week. You can see that this is a fairly typical week. You have a Chapter 8 discussion, a post due by Wednesday for your weekly attendance, and then respond to 2 classmates by Sunday. You have a Chapter 8 assignment and a Chapter 8 quiz, both by Sunday as well. All right, so let's get into it. Chapter 8 discussion form. Here is your prompt. Reflect outside your usual comfort zone and friend group. So try to think of people who you talk to, but maybe not every day. So it could be like coworkers, people you go to class with. It could be a family or a regular friend. Maybe you just don't talk to them as frequently, maybe just like weekly. And think about someone with whom you had like a disagreement with, and think about how what they said during that disagreement had an effect on you. And as you were communicating, as you were kind of going through this argument or disagreement, did they use correct etiquette when kind of communicating what they wanted to say? If you responded, what did you do to make certain your response was heard correctly and was not offensive? So it's kind of really reflecting on how you communicate with someone with whom you do not always agree with, and how that interaction might look like, and how etiquette is used. And you can talk about on both sides what was done right and what was done poorly, both by yourself and the other person involved in the situation. So I'm going to post that, your original response, by Wednesday, and then respond to 2 classmates by Sunday. Keeping in mind, remember, 150 words is our goal, and then our responses are, meaningful, compare, contrast, asking questions, kind of digging deeper to someone else's response. All right, so that is your Chapter 8 prompt. Now, your first assignment, Chapter 8 assignment, is going to open up into PDF that looks like this. And so these are 3 examples of communication that are not quite professional in the academic setting. You can see this one is an email, and it's to an instructor from a Harry Potter fan. I'm just going to kind of, alarm bells should go off with that, because there's no signature, and this professor might not even know who that is. So to kind of pay attention to that. And you can see that it reads, "Hey, sorry, I wasn't in class. I was on the road trying to get a hotspot so I could take the quaz. I was hoping you would let me take the quaz because I wasn't in class." So obviously that's not written very nicely. What your job is to rewrite that, and you can keep it as an email if you wish, but maybe think about changing the email address, signing it, and then fixing some of this grammar, like anything you can do to make it a little bit more professional. Communication 2 is a text message, starts off with some emojis. I lost my paper when I tried to send it. Can I turn it in late? So your job here is to decide, like, first of all, are we going to keep this as a text message, or maybe are we going to convert this to an email? Are we going to make this a face-to-face? Are we going to keep the same details? And then finally, third, this is a face-to-face as the professor is walking into a meeting. I really don't understand why I failed that paper. I did everything in the assignment and I really tried. I think you don't like me or what I wrote, so you're punishing me. So again, would you keep this as a face-to-face communication? Would you make this an email, a text message? Would you change kind of how it was approached, or maybe the details? So go ahead and you can pull up a Word document and retype it, or you can just do a comment and just hit a submission. But your job is to rewrite each of those 3 communications. And so as you type it, you can just do communication 1, and then you can tell me, or keep it as an email and then rewrite it. Communication 2, what kind of communication is it? Text message, email, face-to-face, and then rewrite the interaction. Same thing for number 3. Are you going to keep it face-to-face? Are you going to change it? And then how are you going to reformat? Because again, I will stress that all of these need change. They're all unprofessional for the academic setting for one reason or another. And so your job is to just rewrite them in a way that is more professional. And you can reflect back on some of the Chapter 8 concepts that talks about communication in a professional setting, especially when you're talking to, professors. So go ahead and make sure you do that. And then you will just submit it either as a Word doc. If you type it in a Word doc, submit it, or you can just type in the comment area and submit it that way. All right, and then finally, your Chapter 8 quiz. Here are your questions. As a member of the new student outreach team, you've been asked to help create a presentation of the differences between everyday communication and what is expected in college. What would you include? So how would you highlight the differences or the expectations between communicating in college versus maybe how you would communicate on the weekends with family or friends. Question 2, reflect on your use of technology. This is the key thing here, technology. I am not talking, and the question is not asking about your everyday face-to-face use of these literacies. Attention, participation, collaboration, network awareness, and critical consumption. What is your most and least developed area? And give an example for each of those most and least areas. So again, we are not talking about sitting in a classroom, oh, I can't pay attention. We're not talking about that. We're talking about in online communication, using technology. How are you paying attention to what you're doing online? How are you participating online? How are you working with others? How are you aware of networks? How are you consuming information? If you're not sure what any of that means, make sure you pull up the text, and you can see right here in section 8.3, this has a whole section on this right here. And it goes into detail with every single component. So please make sure that you are using that and paying attention to how you're answering that question, because again, it is based on technology. Okay, question 3. This talks about listening and speaking. Most people are better at speaking than they are at listening. If you wanted to improve your listening, what 3 strategies would you choose and why? So again, make sure you're answering the key parts of the question there. 3 strategies. Question 4, based on what you learned about the barriers to communication, what do you need to consider when you realize you are not being understood? So you're in a discussion and someone is not understanding what you're trying to say. How do you go about removing those barriers? And then question 5 is a little scenario. Irina's professor asked her to stay after class because her participation is maybe not what it should be. She's in the back of the room and she's on her phone, and the professor is like, oh, she must not be interested. What has led to that conclusion, and how could she communicate a different message? Make sure you submit those responses as well. So just a real quick recap for this week. You are responding to your chapter 8 prompt, which is going to ask you about how you interact with someone with whom you disagree and what that looks like. Your chapter 8 assignment on fixing those communication modes and make them more professional. And then your chapter 8 quiz. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a great week.